The labor costing and billing module in Interact HRMS is a very sophisticated module that allows you to calculate the labor cost of your employees and to distinguish between direct labor cost, the labor burden cost, and the overhead cost. And then it enables you to go and define what exactly you want to include in the direct labor cost versus the labor burden cost and overhead, and what you consider overhead and what do you consider as yearly production hours, so that you can divide your cost by the production hours of the employee and come out with an actual cost per hour. Now, you can set up different rules based on employee group or based on contract. Maybe you have different contracts with different clients and you calculate your cost differently for a particular reason, and or based on job group. Now, the labor costing is one side of the equation. The other side is the billing, because the whole purpose is to allow you to automate the process of calculating your labor costs based on the productive hours of the employees and the actual direct labor burden and overhead, and to then be able to bill your customer in the correct manner. So, for example, we could say that the direct labor cost includes all allowances and includes all earnings, and the burden labor cost includes all benefits and taxes if you have any taxes. And the calculator, which you're going to be seeing, will include all of these elements to allow you to calculate. And here's a setting also on invoicing, how we're going to invoice the client. So we also have to choose here the default overhead cost factor, meaning what percentage of direct labor cost and labor burden cost do you want to add as overhead. So let's say we want to add on top of that another 10%. So as I mentioned, you can go and set up the actual calculation method and make it different based on the employee group, the contract, or the job group. Let's look at an employee group as an example. So for administration staff, we will use the same logic, overhead factor of 10%. The billing rate factor, let's say we add another 30% on top. Now, the direct labor cost variables and calculation method. So the allowances used in the direct labor cost are these. The other earnings used are those. And we're going to be using an annual basic salary, and the calculation method will allow you to adjust the annual basic salary for whatever reason. So you can choose among different methods here. You can say that the calculation method will be annual basic salary times an adjustment factor plus all other allowances, or the direct labor cost per year will be the same as the employee annual gross salary, or you can say the daily basic salary times the adjustment factor plus daily allowances will be used, or the hourly basic salary times an adjustment factor will be used for hourly allowance plus hourly allowances. This will determine the direct labor cost. So the direct labor cost is going to be based on your annual salary plus times an adjustment plus other allowances. So we're going to make that, we won't do any adjustment, we will keep that as 1. Then the labor burden cost, same story. Question is whether you want to include taxes, whether you want to use flat amount for benefits, or whether you want to use the actual benefits. And the calculation method will be the total annual benefits plus total taxes. That's the labor burden. Or whether you're going to use an expression. If you want to use an expression, then you can use the expression builder for that purpose. But here we're not going to use that. And then we go to the overhead cost variables. Annual overhead cost, let's say, is this amount, 100,000. And then you can say, what are the yearly production hours you will calculate? Is it the total number of work hours per year? Just the work hours in general. Is the total number of work hours minus the public holiday hours? Is the total number of work hours minus public holiday and paid leave? So you're only going to deduct the time that they actually worked. Or we're going to look at your daily hours from a timesheet, 45 times your weekly hours, or other production hours, whatever it is that you want to use. The same thing goes for the labor cost hourly rate calculation method. Will you take the direct labor and labor burden and overhead times the factor and divide it by production hours? Or what is it that you're going to use? And the billing hourly rate calculation method, what are you going to use for that? So you see, these are all settings. This is very specific and only used for this particular purpose, obviously. If there's any other calculation that you would want to use instead, then this can always be added as a customization. So once this is done, we'll go to the labor billing, which you can do from our solution. So first you go to the calculator, labor costing and billing calculator, and there you can choose your group, for example, admin staff. Now you can filter based on a job group, based on an organization unit or a particular project that they may be assigned to. So let's say we want this information for this particular group. So now I have the details showing me everything I need to know for these individual employees. You see the columns can be moved, and it shows me the billing rate per hour, billing rate per day, billing rate per month, billing rate annual, labor cost hourly, and so on, based on the definitions that I have shown you earlier that you can set up. So this is my calculator, and with that we can go ahead and invoice or bill the client. That's all it takes. Now there's a lot of calculations behind it, but for the user there's very little to do. And finally, what you do is you go and select your client and your project and the pay period for which you want to invoice your client, and the system will retrieve all the relevant information, will give you the list of employees that can be billed, the start and end date of their work and the work location, the billing rate, the total hours that they worked, and then the total amount. That billing rate is the billing rate that you came up with through the calculator, which is set up as per your own rules of how to figure out the overhead, what overhead to use, what the direct labor cost will be, what the labor burden cost will be, what the production hours are, and so on. Everything is connected. Everything is based on your manner of calculating and invoicing your customers, but you can do the invoicing directly from the system.